Come on. All right, hang on. Turn the camera off just for a minute. I'm coming right back. Hold on. I'll talk to you. You can still hear me. Hey, everybody, jump on in. We're about to go live talking all about mastering your communication at work if you have ADHD. Let's go. Yeah, I'm able to go live on everything except TikTok. So I have to do TikTok separately. Yeah, it's kind of annoying. It's all right. We're all good. Here we go. Boom, boom, boom. Okay, here we go. I'm almost here with you. Here we go. Here we go. Okay, yeah, here we go. Awesome. Well, I'm juiced today. We're going to be talking about mastering your communication with ADHD in the workplace specifically, because man, that's where my as I've talked about before, that's where my lowest low was when I was at work, and my ignorance, my my strategy, it wasn't really a strategy, but the idea that I could just ignore my ADHD brain and just like see how it went well for a while at work. This is back, I started at the Apple Store in 2009, and for several years things went super well until all of a sudden they didn't. So if you are struggling today with your communication in the workplace and you have an ADHD brain, jump on in here, tune in, here we go. Okay, so I got some talking points here. Again, like last time, I know not everyone wants to stick around for the whole video. So I'm gonna go ahead and share with you the topics I'm gonna be covering, specifically within mastering your communication in the workplace, if you have ADHD, and the takeaways. So let me just kick it off with the takeaways, first of all. So the first takeaway is you gotta remember that effective communication in the workplace, if you have an ADHD brain, it's not just about speaking up. It's about being heard and being understood, right? So start today by committing to making your voice count in every interaction you have in the workplace. Stick around if you want to know more details about like what I mean, right? We're going to be digging in. The second point is all around understanding your communication style. And the big takeaway there is if you have an ADHD brain, take a moment today to reflect on how ADHD influences your communication, right? Write down 2 traits that affect your interactions and think about how you can turn these into strengths rather than challenges, right? Using what comes naturally to you to your advantage. All right, stick around if you want to hear more about that. Third thing we're going to touch on is strategies for clear expression. So the takeaway here is before your next meeting at work, all right, or before that next important conversation that you're going to have with someone, take 10 minutes to outline your main points or the questions that you want to make sure you ask. And it's important that you understand like this preparation, you don't need to memorize it, right? It doesn't need to be painstakingly long, but just giving yourself enough time to prep so you can let your ADHD brain do what it does best, right? Like speak from the heart, go with your gut, speak in the moment, because we tend to do that really well as ADHDers. When we let our ADHD brain make connections, like find the insights, right? We tend to actually speak better with a little prep, not too much, before going into the important conversations. So this preparation, like it just ensures that you stay on track, you make the most of the communication opportunity that you have. And when you practice ahead of time, like, all right, here's what I want to say. Like, here's the question I want to make sure I don't forget to ask. Here is the point I really want to make sure I land on. That practice can help you feel more confident when entering that conversation, and you feel more prepared, which A, shows the other person your commitment to being clear and really effective with your communication. And people can usually tell, right? They can usually tell if you've taken a little bit of time just to think ahead of the points you want to make, the questions you want to ask. And it's going to, like, the receiver's going to hear that. They're going to feel that. And then the fourth point we're going to touch on is advocating for your needs. So the powerful takeaway here is today, draft a simple, clear statement explaining a specific adjustment in your workplace that you know could help you perform better, give more, right? Like contribute at a higher level to your team, to your organization, and partner with maybe a supervisor that you really trust and admire, right? Or maybe it's someone within HR, right? Like partner with someone within the organization. It doesn't have to be directly on your team either. And share it with them, right? Discuss how this change could benefit your output at work, like, and ultimately serve and help lift and elevate everyone else in the process. So remember, advocating for yourself, like you're advocating for your own success. You're advocating for your worth. You're advocating for your value. Okay, and then the fifth point we're going to cover today is around building stronger relationships. And the powerful takeaway here is I want you to challenge yourself to practice active listening in your next conversation. So this is really important. When you're in that conversation, right, with a peer, superior, with anyone at work, and it's a conversation that matters. It's one where you feel there's some high stakes, right? You want to come across well. Focus fully on the other person. That's where the prep helps. If you prep a little bit, you're going to make more space in your brain to focus on that person instead of just stressing about what you're saying. And try, if you can, to periodically throughout the conversation, recap what it is you hear from them. Hey, do you mind if I just pause for a second? I just want to make sure I'm hearing you correctly. What I hear you saying is X, Y, and Z. Like, do I have that right? Did I miss something? Man, that honors and respects that other person to such a high degree that they're going to be impressed. That's going to leave a positive, lasting impression because so few people do that. And when you do, it shows you care. It shows you've actually been listening. You've actually been really wanting to hear them instead of just waiting for your next turn to speak. And remember, this is all important because when you are making efforts to build stronger relationships at work by showing that you are intentionally listening, you value what they're saying, you value their perspective, their opinion, their own brilliance, that boomerangs right back, right? And then they're going to do that more for you, and you're going to feel more valued, and you're going to appreciate the team, the people you work with more. Like it's this beautiful circular thing that you can set in motion, and it really will transform like your relationships and the dynamics at work if you can start integrating some of these things. And then the last takeaway I want to share today is if you don't remember anything else, I want you to remember this and hear this. Today, pick one communication strategy that I just shared. Like I shared a whole bunch. I didn't go into detail because we're about to go into details. Pick one communication strategy we discuss and implement it today, immediately. The next time you're able at work, implement, try, experiment. Whether it's preparing for a meeting, whether it's advocating for a need, or engaging more deeply in conversations with people that you work with, these small steps can lead to big changes that make your life better. You're going to feel more engaged. You're going to feel more valuable. You're going to appreciate the vibes, right? You're going to appreciate the vibes you're putting out, and you're going to appreciate what you're getting back from other people. That's everything to giving yourself a workday that feels better, that feels positive, that feels like progress, that feels like everyone's got each other's back and everyone's looking out for one another instead of just dog eat dog. So I really want to empower you to be proactive and watch, if you're proactive, how your workplace interactions will improve drastically. And drop in the comments. Like, I want to hear, what's that one thing you're going to implement and do today? Tell me. I want to know. Maybe you don't know. Maybe you have a question. You're like, man, like, Ross, I mean, this isn't really landing. Here's what I know I need to do. I'm not sure how to do it. Drop it in there. Like, I would love to either get on a call with you one-on-one or share some feedback, just depending on what you ask. But like, I want to serve. I want to support you. Or share this with someone else who has ADHD, maybe who has ADHD as well as you, right? Because they need to hear this. They need support. They need those new insights and ideas for how to level up their own experience at work. Okay, so here we go. Digging into the details for the people who can stick around, who really care about developing and improving themselves. So let's just baseline. Mastering your communication, especially in the workplace, specifically when you have an ADHD brain, is huge. Because here's the thing, a couple things with ADHDers. You like to share, right? You like other people to hear your ideas, to hear what you're thinking. You like to ask questions. You want clarification. You might not always have the confidence to ask those questions, but when you do, you feel better because you have more clarity on what other people are expecting of you. You have more clarity on the deadlines. You have more clarity on your resources that are available. And it allows you to move forward with this feeling that the wind is at your back instead of you pushing against the wind because you're not asking the questions you want to ask or need to ask. You're not taking partners and you're worried about being judged for asking a silly question or taking too much of someone's time. That's why we're digging into this. Okay, so I just want to touch on my own experience for a second. So when I was at my lowest low back in 2016, working at the Apple store, I was freaked out because I thought I was going to lose my job. Maybe you feel that way. Maybe you're freaked out because your boss no longer your boss isn't showing their support, or your boss is not sounding like they really are believing in you like they once did. And that's causing you to doubt yourself, right? Your ADHD brain is focusing on all the things that are going wrong, that other people are saying, you're not doing this right. You're screwing this up. And that's a slippery slope to you wallowing in your own shame, wallowing in embarrassment, wallowing in frustration for how you've let people down. And that is not going to help you move in the direction you want to go. So I recognized that I needed help. The people I was most confident at that time in my career to get help from were people in my personal life. So think right now, maybe there's someone in your life who is a longtime family friend, right? Someone you've known who's known you since maybe you were a kid. And you love having conversation with them. You love being engaged with them because there's trust there. There's safety there. They always make you feel appreciated and valued. Talk to that person. Tell them what's going on. Trust them enough to be vulnerable and open so that they can guide you with their own wisdom and greater life experience, because that's what you need in this moment. That's what I recognized. I took partners with some people in my life who were not from work, and I was vulnerable. And I just told them what was going on. And I didn't know what they were going to say. But the biggest takeaway, the thread from all these people was, don't isolate yourself, Ross. So I want to tell you, don't isolate yourself right now. What you must do in order to improve your communication is to start taking partners so they can begin to safely show you some areas where maybe you could do different. Some aspects of your engagement and relationships at work where you could maybe focus in a little more, right? You could approach things in a new, novel way. So that's what I started doing. And that really changed the game for me when I took these family friends, I took their advice to not be isolated. And I actually reached out. This took a lot of courage and a lot of strength. But I reached out to people at work who weren't even directly on my team, but they were within the organization. And I had a conversation with them. And they were they were able to hear me, and they were able to encourage me to take the next step that made the most sense. And it wasn't a step I was excited to take, right? It was connecting with some of these people on my existing team that I felt like were really against me. I felt like were really disappointed in me. But that was an important conversation or conversations to prepare for. And I wouldn't have been able to feel confident and prepared for those had I not started with taking a partner outside of work, who then could direct me and encourage me to take another partner within the organization who I just trusted, who could then encourage me to talk to that boss, to talk to that peer, and begin to find common ground, right? Show them, hey, like, I'm not going anywhere, right? I want things to be better. I want to know how I can improve. And that's where it starts. So if you have ADHD, do not stay isolated. It's the worst thing you could do, especially if you know that the communication has soured, right? From you to peers or people at work, or from them to you, like it's soured, it's gone downhill. The first step to reviving it, it's kind of a paradox, but you got to get back. You got to get back in the batter's box. You got to get back up to the plate and engage in conversations with those folks again. I hope that helps. Hope that makes some sense. Okay, second point here, understanding your communication style. So our ADHD traits, your ADHD brain, it has a big effect on the way you communicate, right? You have a lot of ideas. Your thought processes are happening rapidly, way faster than neurotypical brains. And this also is causing your mind in conversations to jump around, right? Like even if you're trying to listen, sometimes you're thinking about this, you're thinking about that, you're connecting these points and you want to say this and actually I'm really excited to talk about this. So you need to first think about what's hardest for me when I'm having a conversation that I really value, that matters a lot, right? Do you struggle talking too much? Do you struggle making room for that other person to share? Do you, is it kind of word vomit? Does your ADHD brain, does it influence you to be overly intense and passionate and maybe too excited when the situation doesn't call for it? I know that happens to me all the time. I'm so intense, so passionate, so excited about all things in life. And I really have to be mindful of that when I'm entering conversations where I need to approach it at a different speed. I need to approach it in a different gear in order to have the influence and outcome that I'm hoping for. So this starts with self-awareness, right? It starts with maybe planning for that conversation, right? It starts with journaling and just thinking about like, hey, how did my communication go today? What were some things I tried that were different, that were new? How did that go? How do I want to pivot? What do I want to continue to do? What do I want to start doing differently tomorrow? And what do I want to stop doing when it comes to the way I'm communicating with people at work on my team? So some things to think about there. So here's what I want you to do. Today, reflect on how your ADHD is influencing your communication, right? Write down 2 traits that affect your interactions. So for me, I would be writing down like my intensity. My eyes get super big. My wife often says, "Oh my gosh, Ross, your eyes are about to pop out of their sockets. I need you to like take it down a notch." I know that my volume can get super elevated and it can unintentionally make people think that I'm more upset than I am, or a variety of things. So those are a couple of things for me. Like I come off really intense if I'm not careful, more intense than I want to. And I often am, my voice can get really loud and like stay at this elevated volume. And that doesn't foster safety. It doesn't make the other person feel like I'm ready and like curious to listen to them. It makes people think that I just want to get my point across. And again, it's 2 people having the conversation. So both people should have time at the microphone, right? Should have time to speak and share. And you own that. Like, this is your conversation that matters. You can decide how you drive it. So think about those 2 traits that affect your interactions, right? And you're like, dude, that's definitely probably because of my ADHD. Write those down and think about how you can turn these things into strengths rather than challenges. So for me, when I think about my intensity, right? My eyes getting real big, that's okay to have in conversations with people at work, but I need to be really strategic with when I turn that on. And the same thing goes for my elevated volume. Like elevated volume is totally okay, but it's way more interesting when the volume can, come and go, right? It gets elevated when maybe we're both like really feeling each other and we're like totally agreeing on something. The volume can get elevated and then it can come down when I'm asking them a question and I'm wanting to listen to them. Hopefully that helps. So the third thing is talk about strategies for clear expression. So this gets back to the preparation piece. It's so important to prep. All right, just like if you have ADHD, man, put your hands in the air, put in the comments if you struggle with planning your life, with planning your days. If that is just a week after week, a daily, monthly burden, and it just feels like it's the monkey you can't get off your back, I get you. You're in good company. That's also why it's so important to prepare for these conversations. Because part of the reason when you start this journey of adding some of these practices into your life that build your self-awareness, that give your brain the nutrition and the activity and the dopamine and all the things that it needs to operate at its highest level, you're doing more exercise, you're meditating, you're getting proper sleep, you're getting some of these things in place, you start to recognize how important it is to plan. And it doesn't mean it gets easier, but it's important. Whereas before, you can have ADHD and literally just like ignorance is bliss, right? You can go throughout your day and you're not planning and you're just living in the moment. You're flying by the seat of your pants and you are doing just fine. That's how things can feel when you're ignoring your ADHD, when you're not managing it. But again, shit will hit the fan at some point. At some point, people who care or love you enough, or people at work who just are tired of your bullshit, are going to say, hey, this isn't working anymore. And as you get more responsibility, as you become a parent, as you maybe like own a home, or like the more adult that we become and the more responsibilities that we take on, the more our ADHD default mode, which is like, I'm just gonna like be myself, the more that impacts other people in your life in a negative way. Wow, that seems like a topic for another live. We could go really deep on that. But I say all this because that's why it's important to prep for these conversations. Outline a few key points. What's a question you want to ask? What's the feeling that you want this person to walk away with after their conversation with you? Is there one question that you're dying to ask them, but it's kind of a big one? You don't want to ask it right at the beginning. Like, write that question down. So you are helping give your brain a chance to connect the dots and remember to land the plane around the most important parts of the conversation that you know are going to make the difference. So you could do that by yourself, you could do that with other people, but noting some of the things that you want to cover in a conversation that's important to you in the workplace, it will build your confidence. It will make entering that conversation less stressful, less anxiety producing, because you're not winging it entirely, right? This is a delicate dance because with ADHD, I've been reminded of this recently, speaking from the stage. When I memorize something, because I want to make sure I don't mess it up, I don't want to screw it up, I want to make it just right. When I memorize it, I'm actually like, I'm cutting off the legs of my potential. Because ADHD at its best, you have this insane ability to make connections in the moment, to have breakthroughs and insights, literally more rapidly and like instantly than the average brain. And so if you shut that off, if you close that valve of your potential by just like memorizing what you want to say to someone, you're not going to come across as eloquently. You're not going to come across as authentically, and you're going to walk away not feeling as settled about how you showed up and led and participated in that conversation. So here's the takeaway. Before your next meeting, all right, before your next meeting at work, take 10 minutes to outline your main points or questions. All right, now, this doesn't have to be right before the conversation. If you have ADHD, it probably will. But if it's something you're thinking about, take 10 minutes right now, even if the conversation is 5 days away or it's next week. I know this it's a little bit of a paradox. I'm even suggesting this because for ADHD brains, this is how time exists for us. There's now and there's not now. So if something's not now, we don't want to make time for it. And if something's now, it's like do right now, today, in 10 minutes. Okay, we're ready to make time for that thing. But you will help yourself and you will release some of the pressure and anxiety and stress leading up to that conversation if you can give yourself the gift of starting to brainstorm as far ahead of time as you're thinking about it, really. So I'm remembering where I was at. Okay, so this preparation, it helps you stay on track and make the most of your opportunities to connect and communicate and get on the same page with people at work. And when you practice or you just prep a little ahead of time, it shows that other person your commitment to clear and effective communication. Man, when I was at my lowest point at Apple back in 2016, there were a lot of different things that you could do. Like if you heard from your boss at work that they were super pissed off with you and they were really frustrated and disappointed with just this huge laundry list of things, that would push a lot of people to like make an exit, like run for the hills. And that's one way to do it. But I really wanted to learn. Like I didn't want to just run away. I wanted to prove them wrong. And I also wanted to prove to myself that I could improve, that I could be better because I wanted to be. If you desire to be better for people on your team, because you care about them, right? You're with them every day. They're friends or they've grown to be friends. They've grown to just be people that you you think about often, you have goodwill towards. You can serve them in such a powerful way by just showing up prepped and ready to deliver clear and effective communication that honors both parties. And what I was doing is I decided to partner with each of my peers on my team. And so we actually stepped outside the Apple store and we sat down, and I had a very vulnerable, open, and targeted conversation with each of these people, asking them, what do you see? How can I improve? How can I be better? Here's what I'm hearing. I'm hearing that my time management's a struggle. I'm hearing that I'm coming across as super disorganized and it's impacting the team. I'm hearing that my priority setting is not so great. I'm hearing that when it comes to this project I'm in charge of, I haven't taken enough partners. I've been just doing it on my own too much. What advice do you have? What insight do you have? I want to learn. I want to be better. That's so powerful because your ADHD brain is best understood when you can extend vulnerability to someone else. You can extend trust. And typically when that happens, the other person will feel safe to be vulnerable and open and honest and direct with you. And I'm not going to say that didn't hurt hearing some of their very direct and honest and candid pieces of feedback. It stung. But it also earned a lot of respect from them. And I could tell. I could feel that in the moment. So there was short-term pain, but there was long-term gain, right, that I was depositing in the bucket of relationships. Hold on a second. Oh my gosh. I need to look at something here. Okay, great. Whew, God. It's like, oh my gosh. Something popped up. It's like, am I late for something? No, I'm not. Wow, that was a very ADHD moment. Woo! There we go. Okay, fourth point. You got to advocate for your needs. Man, I'm going to tell you, I struggled to advocate for my needs for many years when I started out in the workplace after I got out of college. I'm in Apple retail. Things are going well. I'd spent my entire life like trying different medications and trying to remember to take my medication and working with psychiatrists and struggling through school. And ADHD just felt like this huge curse. It felt like this giant pain in the ass that made my life worse. At the time, I didn't see the ways that it was benefiting me at all. So I just turned my back on it. And for years, when I started at Apple, I didn't tell anybody about my ADHD brain. I didn't give any hint at all that there was anything different going on with me. And that worked for a while. But then the rubber really met the road. Because as I got more responsibilities, that's when everything started to crumble. And then I still didn't share with people that I had ADHD, even when I was struggling. And it took the most extreme circumstance of basically being told, not entirely, but in a lot of different ways, like your job is at stake. Your career is on the line. And something needs to change rapidly. That pushed me to reconsidering sharing with others at work about my ADHD. And that was really scary. Like, I had to take partners. That's where I found my first ADHD coach. And through talking to him, through working with him and working with an ADHD psychiatrist, I was able to get to the point where I felt like I could engage in those conversations with enough wherewithal of how my ADHD brain works and the things I wanted to ask for and the things I wanted to share, the insights that I wanted to share that would allow people I worked with to just understand, right? Not to build sympathy, but to build empathy, to build compassion within the people I worked with. So that's why it's so important to advocate for the things you need. I'm not saying you got to jump into telling people at work, everyone at work, you have ADHD. Because one, if you just tell people you have ADHD, a lot of times there's a lot of judgments, quick judgments people make, and there's a lot of misunderstandings. So you got to be careful about that. But when you can advocate for just some things that could be different, that could really support you and the way you're wired, you could just phrase it that way, that could be enough to release some of the pressure. So you and your ADHD brain, at whatever part of the journey you're on and managing it and understanding it, you can release a little pressure that can make you just feel a little more capable of moving forward, right? Because the more pressure, the more intensity, the more everything feels like it's crumbling, the less equipped and able you're going to feel about getting help, about getting support, about finding a coach, about finding the right treatment. So here's a takeaway. Write down today a simple, clear statement or idea, just explaining a specific workplace adjustment that could help you perform better. Whatever it is, you're like, man, like, and if you're an entrepreneur, that's okay. Write down, like, man, if I made this adjustment, like if anything was possible, I love that question. If anything was possible, what's an adjustment you would make in your business as an entrepreneur or in your job at work, in your role on that team, that would allow you to perform better, that would relieve you of something that's really been bogging you down? What is that? Write it down. This is how we make progress. This is how we learn. This is how we develop that self-awareness that's so crucial to where you want to end up in this journey you're on of understanding your ADHD, harnessing it, mastering it, getting the most out of the gifts and the benefits that do exist within your unique brain. So write that thing down and then approach somebody. Approach a friend, a peer, someone you trust, and just share it with them. Get their insights, get their input. Better yet, share it with somebody who actually understands ADHD, who empathizes with it, who has compassion towards it. That would help even more. But remember that when you advocate for yourself, you're advocating for your success. You're advocating for your future, for everything you want, for the dreams that you have for your family. And when you don't advocate for those things, when you just stuff it, when you just silence your voice, when you just say, well, no one else needs that, or no one else is asking for that, so I'm not going to ask and I'm not going to bring it up. What good is that doing for you? You deserve better. So take the step. Be courageous. Honor yourself and share. Share what you need. Share what you would like to see different. The next point is building stronger relationships. Man, this is so huge. So I have an auditory processing deficit. That doesn't do a lot of great things for listening. Like, just to give you an example, that's how my parents figured out that something was going on. Was in second grade, I actually came home from school crying, and I was all upset. My mom was like, what's going on? And I said, man, I can only imagine my second grade self and the voice I had then. It certainly didn't sound like this. But I'm terrible with voices, so I'm not going to try. But I came home and said, Mom, everyone in my class was laughing at me today. And I was just raising my hand asking questions. Well, it turned out when my mom followed up with the teacher that I kept asking questions that had just been directly answered. Like had I been listening, what everyone thought wasn't happening, I wouldn't have needed to ask that question. But that wasn't the problem. So there was an assumption, there was a judgment that I wasn't paying attention, that I wasn't trying to focus on what the learning, that was taking place, what the teacher was sharing in the lesson. That wasn't at all. We found out that I have an auditory processing deficit, which just means that I can listen better than most people and still not actually take in everything that they're saying. Now, there's no way for me to know. The only way that I actually recognize this as I got older is like in college, I had a note taker, and I would take notes in class, I would sit in the front, make sure I wasn't distracted as much as possible, taking notes on my computer, always on my computer, and I'd have a note taker in the class, someone that would share their notes with me. And I would see time after time that I would miss, like huge chunks of the lecture would just be missing. And I'm like, okay, I know that I was attentive the whole time. I know I wasn't like screwing off or, I don't know. Smartphones weren't even a thing at this time. So I wasn't on my phone. There's no point to doing that. It was my auditory processing deficit. So here's my point. I understand the challenge of getting better at listening. Now, ironically, people find me, I've been told, to be a really great listener. It's partly probably because I have to work really hard at it in order to fight against my auditory processing deficit. So I have an auditory processing deficit and I have an ADHD brain. You might be like, oh my gosh, I have ADHD and I'm dyslexic. I have ADHD and anxiety. I have ADHD and depression. Like, very common for ADHD brains to have a comorbidity, like another thing. That's more common than not, actually. So I digress. But when it comes to listening, this can really improve your relationships at work. So some practical tips here. One thing that's really served me, and I've gotten great feedback about it, is when I am in conversation with somebody, especially at work, and often, I'm wanting to share something with them. I'm wanting to express an idea I have. When I create space to hear their thoughts and their perspective, and then share back with them what it is that I heard, so powerful. Number one, I have to do this because of my auditory processing deficit. I can't trust myself to have actually heard everything exactly as they intended it. So this happens in my coaching too. Like I'll repeat things back to people. Well, that's a best practice of coaches because it shows the other person that you actually are really caring about listening to them, but it's something I actually need to do. So whether you need to do it or not, the other person is going to be blown away because most people don't do this. Just take an inventory. Today, just go be an observer, right? In your conversations or watch other people. I guarantee you're going to hear very few people in your life, including probably yourself, pausing and saying, oh man, so what I hear you saying is X, Y, and Z. And am I understanding that right? Like, please let me know if I'm off a little bit, but is that what you were sharing? People will be blown away. And it will leave a lasting impression. People will want to have more conversations with you because it's not all about you and what you want to express and share, but you through that little strategy have shown them it's just as much about them and what they have to share and what they want to express and the ideas and things that they often don't feel like people make space to hear or value or want to know. So challenge yourself to practice active listening in your next conversation that you have at work, right? If you're an entrepreneur, practice active listening with just someone in your network, right? You're on the phone with, you're on a Zoom call with. Practice active listening. You can do it in every relationship in your life. So today, tell yourself, in the conversations I have today with whoever, especially at work, because that's what this is all about, focus fully on that other person. Maybe you're going to just really get captured and, curious about their eyes and their facial expressions, make it a game for yourself and summarize what they're saying. Don't wait till the end to summarize. right? If you need to, like if they're telling you a lot, feel free to summarize midway through. I'm telling you, this is a hack for ADHDers. Because if you have ADHD, you love to share. And let me just tell you, most people are not as excited to listen to you share as much as you want to share. I know. It tears me up. I wish my wife, just like loved hearing me share for just hours on end. That would just light my fire. That's not how it works. So take time to do that today. Respond thoughtfully. Show them that you care as much about what they're saying and sharing with you as what you are wanting to express and what you're wanting to get across to them. That's a absolute hidden unlock to building stronger relationships. If you can tap in and level up your own ability to actively and intentionally listen, it will completely transform the relationships you have at work and therefore completely revolutionize your experience at work. Because the more people on your team that are for you, they're like, man, like Ross, dude, he's always listening. He's always super excited to like ask me questions and he makes space to like hear my thoughts. That will change everything because people are going to be more for you than they are against you. It will probably add some buffer to maybe the ways that you are unintentionally irritating people at work, right? Or they're feeling like they're just getting really frustrated with certain things that you're doing. But if you incorporate this in your interactions with them, it's going to help fill that bucket up of that person's compassion and empathy towards you. A lot of thoughts, probably a lot of the same thoughts I've shared over and over. I hope that does serve you to some degree. That's what I'm here for. So that's all I got today. And I would just encourage you, take some immediate action. Like, what's one strategy we discussed today that you're going to implement immediately? Like maybe it's preparing for a meeting. You're actually going to write a few ideas down, right? You're like, okay, I'm going to freaking start to unlock my ADHD brain by advocating for what I need. I'm going to make a change as an entrepreneur in my workplace, in my setup. Like I'm going to ask someone at work for an adjustment. And I'm going to explain why that adjustment might really unburden me and allow me to actually give and serve and have a greater impact on the goals of the company and the organization. Maybe it's just engaging more deeply in conversations with people that you care about in your life and that you're going to interact with today. Remember, I forget this all the time. Small steps lead to the big changes. Small steps lead your ADHD brain to the transformation, to waking up one day and being like, wow, I'm not the same. That's what happened with me. As I started taking small steps with exercise, small steps with meditation, small steps with active listening, small steps with preparing for conversations, small steps with sleep, small steps with time with my spouse, small steps with being more intentional with my daughter, small steps with planning, small steps with adjusting my workspace. The list goes on and on and on. You have to start somewhere, but then you will notice in 3 months, in 6 months, the changes just start compounding. You're going to be like, dang, by being more proactive, I've completely changed every aspect of my life. This feels better. And you feel more confident. And you step into your power. And you begin to believe yourself that your ADHD brain just needed to be understood. It just needed to be fed with what it needs. And you're on the road to harnessing and unleashing your greatness that truly exists because of your ADHD. Okay? Anyone have any questions? Any questions at all? Come on, drop them in. I got a few more minutes here. Would love to answer any thoughts you have. Maybe it's about your own struggles with ADHD. Maybe it's, Maybe there's someone in the workplace that's pissing you off and they have ADHD, right? This is a great opportunity to be like, hey, I got some questions about this. Let me know. I would love to serve, would love to support. And please drop me a comment below if you just want to know, you want me to cover specific topics. I show up to these lives and I'm deciding, I'm thinking of what would best serve you, what you want to hear about, but I'm also not a mind reader. So drop it in there because I want to hear from you so I can show up and give you exactly what you're looking for. Give you the insights, give you the ideas, give you just the stories that will trigger your own brilliance to go, oh yes, that's what I can try. Why haven't I thought of that before? All right. No questions. Okay. Hey, I'll see you. Enjoy your weekend. I'll see you on Monday. Bye, everybody.